Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. I have been very privileged to have mentored several interns and on occasion worked alongside other pastors in the parishes I have served. Whenever I have been lucky enough to have them, I have promised them one thing. They will be preaching on Holy Trinity Sunday. It's the only Sunday we have that is focused on a doctrine. I work well from narrative or story, and not so well from doctrine or theology, so I present them with the opportunity to preach that day. This week, following Holy Trinity Sunday, our topic is to talk some about the Trinity, and I found a guest preacher for today's message. And I was excited that she began by talking about how difficult preaching on Trinity Sunday is. She is an Episcopal priest, and her name is V.R. Marianne Zahn. She writes, Episcopal priest and former seminary dean Gary Hall calls Trinity Sunday the preacher's graveyard, and says he used to tell graduating students that when they got ordained, they should avoid this Sunday like the plague. That is fantastic advice for those in a position to follow it. However, having plugged away as an intern, an associate, and now a guest preacher, I have to take the preaching assignments I'm given. So, in all humility, I add my 2 cents on the topic. This is a perilous matter, since through the centuries people have actually lost careers, property, even their lives, because of perceived heresy about the notoriously abstract and esoteric idea of the Trinity. I want to take you back 6 years to a moment I'll never forget when I was an intern at a church of the Ascension in Sierra Madre. About a week after I started, a 16-year-old member of the congregation I'll call Ryan collapsed suddenly at home and fell into a coma. Father Michael, the priest there, had visited the hospital every single day since Ryan fell into a coma, so I was surprised when on Sunday morning he insisted on trying to squeeze a few minutes in between services to go see Ryan yet again. The family had told him they hoped he was going to come out of his coma that morning. He grabbed me after the first service, and we drove to the hospital, and I thought, this makes no sense. We only have time to be there for like 5 minutes. He might not even be conscious yet. And why is he dragging me along anyway? When we arrived and stood in the doorway of the ICU, Ryan was indeed awake. He looked up and saw Father Michael standing there, and both instantly began weeping. I didn't know either of them at this point, but I could see how meaningful it was for them to lay eyes on each other at that precise moment in time. It was clear to me that there was more going on than just their relationship. This one priest represented the whole congregation Ryan had grown up being a part of. Everyone who had encouraged him, joked with him, worshipped alongside him, were present in that room, in that sacred moment, when it became clear that he was going to survive and live the life ahead of him. I felt like I was on holy ground, and I was grateful to have been dragged there, and for the lesson Father Michael had taught me. That whole experience was the furthest thing from an abstract concept. It was real and potent, and it was the Trinity at work. Here is all you need to know about the Trinity. The God we worship exists only in relationship, in the eternal communion of 3 persons, Father, Son, and Spirit. This means that we cannot be Christians alone, because if you do not experience life lived in relationship with your community, you can never really know Jesus. You may follow his teachings. You may be a wonderful person, but you will not be Christian, or at least not a Trinitarian one. And that would be heresy. It might not cost you your job or your life, but it will cost you the experience of being fully human. That moment in the hospital room was a Trinitarian experience. And if you could have been in that room, you would be able to explain what's important about the Trinity to anyone without using any fancy theology. In fact, you did not need to be in the room. If you've ever cried with a brother over his sorrows, or rejoiced with a sister over her good news, you've had a Trinitarian experience, an experience of being in holy community with yourself, God, and one of God's beloved children. I'm glad I found this guest preacher for today. This is worth thinking about and reflecting on. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.